Hey everyone, Daniel here and welcome back to another video. Here today, I want to give you guys an update on BIGG Digital. Yesterday I went ahead and made a video on the company pertaining to the current drop they've had in share price and giving you guys my opinion on their current valuation. Now, a lot of people liked that video, but there were a certain amount of people that said my data was off. So in this video, I want to sit down and give you guys clarity as to exactly the numbers I used for BIGG Digital and the numbers I used for Voyager. As you know, if someone doesn't really follow my channel, they won't know the reasoning behind my numbers for Voyager and why they have a revenue run rate of over $600 million. So in this video, I hope to answer all of those questions and more. And if you find anything wrong with this video, please let me know in the comment section down below instead of just hitting the dislike button, because there's nothing I can do from that. But if you let me know in the comments section, I'm able to actually use that information and potentially apply it to future videos. So if you enjoy this, again, please consider subscribing, and yeah, let's get into it. The first thing that we need to talk about there's this comment left in the comment section down below, and I'm not sure if this is potentially from someone at BIGG Digital as a whole, as a company. I'm assuming it is, but you know, there's no confirmation that it is. So you know, I have to say this is, you know, allegedly someone from the Netcoins team or things along those lines. And what's great is we can use this information to potentially increase the accuracy of my numbers and other things along those lines. So we're going to ignore this to begin with. We're going to take a look at Netcoins first, then I'm going to circle back and take a look at Voyager Digital. When we look at a company like Netcoins, so you know, this individual here, we'll call him Norman, he went ahead and gave us the info that in Q1, Netcoins did $3.4 million in revenue. Right, we know this. This was released by the company and whatnot. And when I look at my numbers, I actually use a substantially higher number. I want to give you guys an inside look into exactly what I used. I used a revenue run rate of $24 million. And I go through my reasoning behind this in the video. I use some optimistic numbers, something a little bit higher than in April, to assume something potentially for May. And then I stuck in $1 million in revenue for Clue and BitRank. Now again, we'll talk about this in a second, but I want to talk about first and foremost Netcoins, the revenue that Netcoins brings in as a company. When we look at Netcoins here, we got a big update here. And again, this is not 100% true. This could very well be someone in the comment section just giving out false information, but I don't think so. I'm going to trust this individual, and going forwards, I think this information is actually very likely. From my understanding of Netcoins, they're growing pretty dang significantly, so seeing the growth that we're about to look at is actually pretty reasonable, and that's the only reason why I'm actually considering this being real and things along those lines. So let's take a look at this. How is Netcoins performing in May so far? While we are only 10 days into May, Netcoins revenue is tracking to set another monthly record. For the first 10 days of May, revenue shows a 35% jump over April. New customer acquisition has grown by 2.2x in May over April, while setting all-time records. As we get more clarity on our Q2 growth trajectory, we intend to release updated forward-looking revenue targets. This is very, very good, guys. When I look at a company like BIGG Digital, one of the things that's stopping me from actually taking a look at their forward numbers is guidance. And that's one of the great things about Voyager Digital. When we look at a company like them, they say, or have said in the past, that their goal is to get right around $50 billion in assets under management by 2025, and they laid out a strong goal to do so. So I mean, if anyone from Netcoins is watching this video, it would really be appreciated if the team are there or whatnot, set out some long-term goals. It really helps investors, especially different YouTubers, to really use those numbers to potentially come with valuation targets. And if those numbers are low, a lot of investors recognize that. So just generally speaking, if this guidance here that we're going to get in Q2 is going to be phenomenal from a valuation standpoint. And let's focus on what we're talking about here in the month of April. They're saying that revenue jumped 35% so far in May over April. Now, what we know about April is that they did right around $1.55 million in the month of April. Now, when we look at this on an annualized basis, 1.55 times 12 is right around $18.6 million on a yearly basis. When I look at my estimates, I have a $24 million revenue run rate, a little bit above that. What we got now, and obviously this is not 100% true, is that this what we saw here, $1.55 million in revenue for the month of April, could very well exceed over 35% of that in May. Keep in mind, we're just looking at the first 10 days here. So if we assume that potentially this 35% jump kind of transpires throughout the month of, and continues rather throughout the month of May, we could assume potentially revenue of over $2.1 million. And again, this is conservative because you got to consider that as Netcoins kind of continues to add new accounts onto the Netcoin platform, and as more people kind of sign up and deposit money and trade, this will escalate throughout the month. So potentially now we might be at a $2.1 million revenue run rate, but by the end of the month, we could very well increase to potentially a $2.2, $2.3, $2.4 million revenue run rate. But anyways, using this number here, this $2.1 million, we can annualize this and get a $25.1 million revenue run rate, already exceeding my original estimate. And this is where we got to make some adjustments here because, now we can assume potentially, price in a little bit of growth for the remainder of May. Obviously, we don't have clarity yet as to what Q2 will be, but assuming potentially a bit of an increase, we can maybe go 1.45%. That might be a little bit, too optimistic. I don't think so. And again, if we're pricing in growth into June, that's completely fine. Keep in mind, this is a current valuation. This isn't forward-looking in any way. And Netcoins and BIGG as a platform will continue growing going forwards. So, my understanding of the company isn't on a high enough level to allow me to project 1 year out or potentially even further as, growth in the United States potentially once they expand there, or growth into Europe is very uncertain as we haven't expanded there yet. And the market opportunity isn't that clear yet, at least at this moment in time. So that is why I'm using this kind of current price to sales ratio metric to determine a fair value, and then any growth we get above that will obviously be added to the share price. So given this, we have a $27 million revenue run rate for the month of potentially May. Right? And we had right around $25 million. So this is already significantly higher and shows the growth that they're experiencing. Throughout the remainder of the year, it wouldn't surprise me for them to get to potentially, well over $2, potentially $3 million a month when it comes to the Netcoins platform. So at $27 million, what I did earlier was add $1 million in revenue for Clue and BitRank. Now, this is a side of their business that has massive potential. Some of their competitors are worth billions of dollars, but it is very important to note the fact that at this moment in time, they aren't strong revenue generating sources. And looking at them from an investor's point of view, although they do have long-term potential, they currently don't generate too much revenue. So, I add $1 million in revenue for Clue and BitRank. I ask this individual here exactly what their thoughts are on that kind of number. I personally think it is potentially a little bit optimistic, but I'm going to continue using that $1 million figure. Again, if you have any different numbers, please download the spreadsheet and please change this for yourself. Again, I like BIGG. I don't invest in them personally. I like Voyager Digital, and we'll go through why in a second here. But personally, BIGG has a phenomenal product, and they have phenomenal growth. And going forwards, as long as they maintain this growth, the valuation will make sense. And it's actually starting to make sense given this growth. Let's take a look at this. $27 million in revenue from Netcoins on a yearly basis. Let's assume potentially $1 million for something like a Clue and a BitRank. That gives us $28 million a year in revenue, already higher than the 24 we had. So if we replace this with 28, that price to sales ratio dropped dramatically. And the share price here, it continues to drop. I just want to show you guys what the stock is doing here today because the market just continues. Woo! Would you look at that, guys? We're up 16% from the very bottom. That's crazy. So anyways, $1.40. We got to change this, obviously. But at $1.40 here today, a company like BIGG is trading at a price to sales of right around 12.3. Right, so looking at that, I don't think that's undervalued, or I don't think that's overvalued in any way, shape, or proportion. I think that is potentially on the brink of, kind of fairly valued, if not more likely undervalued. I think these brokerages should trade anywhere from a 10 to potentially a 15 price to sales ratio going forwards into the future due to the profitability of their business with very strong EBITDA margins. And looking at a company like BIGG Digital, they are no exception to that and will continue to have phenomenal revenue growth and profitability going forwards. So even using this current number here, we get a price to sales ratio of 12.3. That's pretty low. That is pretty dang low. But the next thing I want to focus on is Voyager Digital, because this is a company that I looked at, and obviously this revenue run rate here is substantial. I don't think a lot of people understand this number, as although I do cover it on my channel, unless you watch all of my Voyager videos, you probably don't know how I got this number. And I want to go through this right now. I just want to make sure Voyager Digital stock price is actually hasn't rebounded significantly either, just to kind of get a better sense. No, it's still down 1%. So this is actually pretty dang close to what we had yesterday. They've actually recovered pretty well when we look at the sector. Now, what I'm going to do is show you guys exactly what Voyager's revenue run rate is from my understanding, and give you guys an in-depth look into this. And you know, what the comment kind of said here in his rebuttal was, you know, when we look at 2020 Q4 revenue, it's only right around $3.5 million. So where you get a revenue run rate of over 600 million, and it's very important to understand this, the growth that Voyager has experienced throughout January, February, March, and April has been substantial. And I mean when I mean substantial, I mean very, very quick. And I'm going to show you guys a chart here going through all of this. I have it charted. In 2020, in December of 2020, we had a revenue of $1.7 million, assets under management of $230 million. In January, we experienced substantial growth, $8.6 million in preliminary revenue paired with assets under management of $750 million, principal value traded of $840 million. Keep in mind, their revenue is proportionate to their principal value traded. So as long as this number increases, their revenue increases pretty much parallel with that. Going forwards into February, you saw assets under management increase substantially. They also announced preliminary revenue of $20 million, paired with a double up in principal value traded. So what we saw in this situation was not just an increase in the principal value traded, but also essentially the money they make off of each transaction going from 1% to 1.25%. So you have those two tailwinds going forwards and leading to that strong revenue growth. Going into March, they announced assets under management of $2.4 billion and principal value traded of $2.5 billion. Assuming that this number stayed stagnant throughout the month, we can assume revenue of $31.25 million in the month of March. Again, this is assuming this number stays stagnant, which has either drifted higher or stayed the same throughout the prior months. Now, going into April, this is where things get a little bit, we got to predict some things. They announced assets under management of at least $3.3 billion. I think this is closer to 3.4, if not 3.5, but again, let's use 3.3. What we've seen with principal value traded is it generally tends to track assets under management. So here when we had January numbers, although assets under management were $750 million, principal value traded above that. Assets under management, principal value traded. Assets under management, principal value traded. They track each other on average. So when we look at a month like April, we can assume that we had $3.3 billion in assets under principal value traded, especially due to the fact that we had a lot of altcoins traded throughout the month. So, due to the fact that we had a lot of altcoins traded, the percentage that Voyager made off of each transaction increased as well, as their least profitable kind of transactions are Bitcoin and Ethereum, but their most profitable are tokens like Dogecoin or XRP or Cardano, the smaller ones. Obviously, they charge a higher commission on those. So because of that, they announced a 45% increase in the average kind of percentage gained from each transaction. And due to that, we can assume potentially 1.6% to 1.81% of all transactions going down to revenue. So assuming that, we get preliminary revenue of anywhere from $52.8 to $59.7 million. That's huge. And that's how I got to this number. And assuming this, we annualize that 52.8 and we get a potential revenue run rate of $630 million. And again, that's using that conservative number of 1.6%. If we move up to 1.81%, that's obviously a $60 million revenue run rate, and you got a $700+ million yearly revenue run rate. That's huge. So when we come up with this number, that's how I got it. Voyager has been releasing data on a monthly basis, and we can use that to assume certain figures, especially revenue for months like April. And again, if you disagree with this number, feel free to change it up. I'm going to leave this linked in the description down below. If you disagree with any of these numbers, please please change them up. As again, I am not a financial advisor. I'm not telling you to buy, sell, hold Big G in any way or shape or form. I'm just giving you guys my opinion and my perspective as to the valuation of the company at this moment in time. Now, again, as I mentioned previously in the video before, Big G has a big chance of growing significantly going forwards. And, assuming we can take a look at this revenue run rate as well, if we assume potentially, again, I'm going to get rid of this annualized kind of figure here. This is just Netcoins on a monthly basis. We can assume potentially a higher monthly revenue run rate. Obviously, as they continue to grow, this will expand. So let's assume potentially at some point, whether that be in June, July, August, this number gets up to potentially 3.5. Right? Or, let's go 4. Let's go 4. If in this situation, we might get a kind of a place where, annualizing this, we get $48 million in revenue from Netcoins on a yearly basis. That's the revenue run rate. Again, adding potentially $1 million, let's add $2 million for something like a clue. This is, again, a little more forward-looking, potentially a few months, potentially a little more than a few months. We get $50 million on an annualized basis. And again, if we plug this in now, we obviously get a much different situation where the price to sales ratio is even lower. And because of this, we can assume a situation where instead of the price to sales ratio going lower, the share price will probably increase. One of the biggest reasons as to the decline that a company like BIGG has faced over the past, however long it's been over the past couple of months here, is because of the overall market. Obviously, they did postpone their release of their financial report, which, caused a few investors to sell, but just generally speaking, nothing's wrong with the business. An overall market pullback has caused the share price to pull back. And when we look at a company like BIGG, I really don't want to send off the message that I don't like them, as I do like them, and I want them to succeed going forwards. So, if you have any disagreement with me, please don't just tell me that I'm wrong. Let me know what your thoughts are on April revenue. Obviously, I'm not projecting too far into the future because I don't have that much clarity and I don't feel confident with any number, as it can be quite off, especially with a company like BIGG that's growth is so volatile going forward. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you being here. If you found any value in it whatsoever, please consider subscribing, and see you guys next time.